Hello and welcome to World News Tonight here on TVP World. I'm Anna Jabłońska. Last week's prisoner swap between Russia and the West was the biggest since the end of the Cold War. Tonight we will take a look at the Belarusian dissidents and the families of political prisoners who say they are disappointed the exchange overlooked hundreds of activists imprisoned by the Lukashenko regime. We will also talk about recent developments in Ukraine. This and much more coming up, but first let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Heavy fighting in Russia's Kursk region has entered its third day. Estonia is imposing stricter customs inspections at its border with Russia. And the Paris Olympics are slowly wrapping up, but it seems Poland's athletes are just getting started. And we start with Ukraine. Ukrainian troops continue their advance in Russia's Kursk region. It's the largest Ukrainian operation on Russian territory since the start of the war.
Clashes between Ukrainian and Russian forces are taking place around the town of Sudzha in Russia's Kursk region. The Ukrainian advance in the area has caught Russian troops largely off guard. Fighting in the area is dynamic, with Ukrainian troops advancing behind enemy lines, meeting little resistance. This is in stark contrast to static trench warfare seen in Ukraine proper. Ukrainian authorities have not commented on the operation directly. However, President Zelensky said that Russia should feel the impact of war it brought to Ukraine.
Ukrainians know how to achieve their goals. And we did not choose to achieve the goals in the war. Russia brought war to our land and must feel what it has done. We strive to achieve our goals as quickly as possible in peacetime, under the conditions of a just peace, and it will be.
Russian authorities claim the situation is under control and Ukrainians are being repelled. Many Russian bloggers and lower-level commanders report a bleaker picture, claiming the area was not prepared to defend against the Ukrainian attack. Evacuation of the civilian population has begun in parts of the Kursk region.
The enemy entered these settlements and took control because there, in principle, in these settlements we already had no forces, no means, no resources. There was one line of defense, the border. And it turns out that the enemy initially passed between our Russian strongholds because the distances were simply huge. That's one thing. Then the enemy came out, rolled out its equipment and entered our territory. That's 10 kilometers as of yesterday. We counted.
The attack on Kursk is not the first Ukrainian incursion into Russian territory, but it is the largest by far. Previous attacks were being conducted by units consisting of Russians fighting on the Ukrainian side, limited in size and range of armaments used. Western countries have recently lifted the restrictions on the use of weapons provided by them within Russian territory. This allowed for the current operations, in which Ukrainian units equipped with modern Western arms are operating on Russian soil.
And joining us now live from Kiev with more is our correspondent Oz Karagi. Good evening, Oz. Now, Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region has entered its third day. What more have we heard from Kiev about the counterattack?
It's been very tight-lipped here in Kiev from government officials, not going on the record to confirm or deny anything. And President Zelensky put a statement out about an hour and a half ago in which you heard a portion of it on your screen. I think the key part that he said is Russia brought war to our land and it must feel what it has done, but still not any kind of confirmation or denial about what's happening in Kursk. Meanwhile, Mikhailo Podolyak, Zelensky's advisor, spoke again, not confirming or denying in detail on Kursk, but spoke more broadly in response. Let's just take a listen to what he had to say.
Escalation is exclusively what the Russian Federation is doing. Everything that Ukraine does is an attempt to get to just peace. Russia will not react to any proposals before it receives appropriate, aggressive, retaliatory strikes.
So it's quite difficult to get an official line on anything that's going on here. So what we are only able to tell you is what we see on our screens, what we're able to gather in the videos and so on, reports that are coming out of the Kursk region at the moment. For example, we saw videos about the company of Russian troops appearing to surrender to Ukrainian forces, get in a truck and be driven into Ukrainian territory. We've also learned what we know from the Russian side. The local authorities have declared a state of emergency there. Putin has also addressed the country, saying that he's going to provide about $90 in compensation for people that have been evacuated from Kursk. So Moscow's certainly acknowledging what's happening, and Kiev certainly isn't. But as was previously said, this is a much larger incursion than previous ones. This seems to include Ukrainian units, not just auxiliary Russian who are fighting on the side of Ukraine. And it's into its third day now. So we do not know where this is going. We have no official line from Kiev, but certainly this is putting pressure on Moscow in a way that I don't think they were expecting.
That's very interesting. Well, Asta, thank you very much for your live report. Keep us updated and take care. Now, Estonia is introducing new security measures at its border with Russia. The increased checks are the first phase of full custom inspections announced by Estonia in July. The measures are intended to prevent sanctioned Russian individuals from crossing into the EU.
Estonian authorities are warning travelers that they should reserve more time for crossing the country's border with Russia. This is due to new stricter security measures at the border crossings. Travelers heading to Russia will now have all of their baggage inspected. Passenger vehicles as well as cargo trucks will also be closely monitored for the possible transport of sanctioned products and materials to Russia. The new measures are expected to reduce the crossing's throughput by half. The decision was made by Tallinn due to the increase in the number of attempts of transport of sanctioned goods to Russia. Some 5,000 such incidents were detected last year. Experts warn that sanctioned goods could still be shipped to Russia through third countries.
And we should also pay close attention what is happening in the Caucasian countries and Central Asia, which are very important evasion and circumvention routes at the moment. And their significance is probably going to increase even after the Estonian customs decision.
The new Estonian measures are largely in line with those already implemented by other EU states neighboring Russia, such as Finland, Poland, and Lithuania.
Some 5,000 Belarusian dissidents are believed to be behind bars for standing up to the Lukashenko regime. The Belarusian opposition is disappointed that not a single one of its activists was released in the recent prisoner exchange between Russia and the West.
This is Ales Bialiatski, a Belarusian pro-democracy activist and a Nobel Peace Prize laureate who is currently serving a 10-year sentence, which he was handed down in a sham trial in 2023. Not including him in last week's prisoner swap fueled disgruntlement in the non-regime Belarusian community.
Total disappointment. I haven't been able to shake it off until just now.
Since working out the details of the recent prisoner swap reportedly took some 18 months, there doesn't seem any chance for Bialiatski's release anytime soon, and he's very unlikely to seek Lukashenko's pardon.
Knowing his character, he will never do it. He will not ask Lukashenko for a pardon. He's not going to ask for a pardon. That's unequivocal. Well, if the situation continues, and the term is long, 10 years.
Another jailed oppositionist, Polish national Andrzej Poczobut, is unlikely to be released either. Even though Poland did release a Russian spy in the East-West swap deal, Poczobut wasn't encompassed by the deal and is being held in appalling conditions.
Political prisoners in Belarus is now isolated. There are no any communication with them, no letters, no contact with families.
Ex-Belarusian political prisoner Mia Mitkevich said the negotiations went over Belarusian authorities' head.
Our democratic forces do not fight to release Belarusian people. In my opinion, there has not yet been a person who could conduct negotiations regarding our oppositionists and those who are in prison.
Meanwhile, the Polish Foreign Ministry says they're holding talks with the Belarusian authoritarian regime over prisoners, but, quote-unquote, those are proceeding along different avenues.
Friends and families of the Polish students detained in northern Nigeria gathered in front of the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs to protest the lack of clarity about the status of the detainees. A group of 6 Polish students and 1 lecturer were detained during the anti-government protest in northern Nigeria 5 days ago. Little is known about the circumstances of their arrest or their current status.
Students majoring in African Studies at the University of Warsaw gathered in front of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to express support for their classmates detained in Nigeria. The detainees, who went to northern Nigeria for a language exchange at Bayero University in Kano, have not been able to contact anyone since their detention last week. Friends and family were reportedly left in the dark regarding the circumstances of the incident. In the latest statement released on Thursday, the Polish Foreign Ministry said that the consul in Nigeria is conducting talks with local authorities and that the charge d'affaires of the Nigerian embassy in Warsaw has been invited to work on the issue.
We can't say anything, for the sake of our children's safety. We have a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. for all the parents of the detained students. We ask for your understanding. The emotions are running high. We have said all that we can, for now.
The students were arrested in the city of Kano during anti-government demonstrations, allegedly for taking pictures. Thousands of Nigerians took to the streets in the first days of August to protest the government's mismanagement of the country's economy. Many waved Russian flags, calling for Russian soldiers to save them.
We don't have a leader, we are the leaders. Now we don't have a leader, someone is asking who gave us this flag. We sewed it ourselves. We don't like Tinubu. Tinubu must go. We want soldiers.
Families of the detained are adamant that the students had no part in the protest. Polish Deputy Foreign Minister Andrzej Szejna said that the students must have found themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, adding that Polish officials remain in contact with Nigerian authorities and the families of the detainees.
Following a set of stellar shows in Warsaw, Taylor Swift fans were met with disappointment and grief after the pop idol's 3 Vienna dates were called off. But the reason behind the cancellation is much more serious than anyone could have anticipated: an attempted terrorist attack.
Instead of lights, music and joy, concertgoers in Vienna found uneasiness, an empty arena and silence. Their favorite pop star, Taylor Swift, would not walk out onto the Austrian stage as her concert was cancelled.
It's really sad, flying all the way here from the Philippines and, hearing the concert will be cancelled due to suspected terrorist attacks. It's just heartbreaking, just frustrating.
Despite their frustrations, fans were understanding of the decision made by Barracuda Music, an Austrian promotion company in charge of the concert, given the grave danger they had avoided.
But at the end of the day, I guess it's for everyone's safety.
Nearly 200,000 Taylor Swift fans had their plans cancelled by a foiled terrorist plot. And, given the most recent report from Austrian law enforcement, they quite literally dodged the bullet, as the main suspect had pledged his allegiance to the Islamic State.
The suspect expressed that he wanted to carry out the attack using explosives and stabbing weapons. We seized those weapons and he considered both options, and his aim was to kill himself and a large crowd at the concert either today or tomorrow.
Thankfully, because of swift and decisive police action, the 19-year-old suspect and his 2 accomplices, aged 17 and 15, were detained before Taylor Swift's world tour was ruined and innocent lives were lost.
2 American astronauts have found themselves in a truly alien situation. They are stuck in space indefinitely. The pair are now on board the International Space Station after their spaceship, the Boeing Starliner, encountered problems with its propulsion system.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
Mr. Barry Butch Wilmore and Mrs. Sunita Suni Williams. 2 American astronauts who were sent on a test mission to the International Space Station aboard the Starliner. They expected the whole ordeal to last around 8 days. They had no idea what was in store for them.
It feels good to float around. It feels good to be in space and work up here with the International Space Station team. So, yeah, it's great to be up here. So I'm not complaining. Butch isn't complaining that we're here for a couple weeks, extra weeks.
Mrs. Williams shared her optimistic outlook on the situation in early July after having already spent a month among the stars.
Thank you to all participants. Station.
Now, 2 months after arriving at the ISS, optimism is starting to fade out, replaced with frustration over not being able to come home, with more waiting on the horizon.
I can tell you that this is the world of test. This is a tough business that we're in. Human spaceflight is not easy in any regime, and there have been multiple issues with every spacecraft that's ever been designed, and that's the nature of what we do, you know.
NASA said that the pair of star-stuck astronauts could be brought back down to Earth using a SpaceX Starship. But that could take a while. The two would have to hold out until February of 2025 at the earliest to catch a ride home.
And let's come back down to earth again. Polish travel agencies are reaping record-breaking profits. This comes amid Polish tourists opting for trips to foreign countries over domestic destinations.
2024 couldn't be looking better for Polish tour operators, with travel agencies reporting an unprecedented number of bookings, totaling nearly 4.5 million in the first half of the year. Poles seem to have whetted their appetite for some uncharted territories.
Polish people now learn a lot of languages. They explore a world. They want to discover new cuisine, new destination, new places, new people.
But still, vacations in Poland enjoy greater popularity among Poles.
Invariably, for years, roughly 2/3 of Poles have been planning their main holiday trip in Poland. Also, it is definitely not true that we prefer to go abroad. Most Poles spend their vacations in Poland.
Though vacations in the country seem like a more budget option, a remarkable 40% of bookings to foreign countries were the so-called first-minute offers, which, according to experts, indicates that Poles have managed to up their standard of living and can now afford even more spendy holidays abroad.
Slowly but surely, the Paris Olympic Games are entering their final stage. Now, Polish athletes are hoping to maintain their momentum following a stunning display on Wednesday.
After the Polish men's volleyball team secured a spot in the Olympic final for the second time in history, other Polish athletes followed suit. Polish boxer Julia Szeremeta shocked fans worldwide by winning her semi-final bout against Nesti Petesio, a Tokyo silver medalist and veteran fighter from the Philippines. 20 years old, Szeremeta will return from her first ever Olympic Games at least as a silver medalist.
She is an ambitious girl, full of character. She simply is a big talent. She has the characteristics of a champion. She has shown already that she knows how to box.
The Pole will face the top-seeded Lin Yu-ting of Taiwan in the final on Saturday, the same day as Poland's volleyball final against the hosts, France. Athletes go to extreme lengths to compete on the highest level and win Olympic medals. Polish heptathlonist Adriana Sułek-Schubert is a prime example. She is the Polish record holder for both the heptathlon and pentathlon, as well as a medalist at various international tournaments. She gave birth to a son just 6 months ago, but that didn't stop her from participating in the Paris Olympics. Determined to secure an Olympic medal for Poland, the athlete trained fiercely before and through her postpartum period. With full focus on the podium, she will compete until late evening today. And while Sułek-Schubert's Olympic journey begins, others are ending. Polish hammer-throwing legend Anita Włodarczyk has returned to Poland after her very last Olympic performance. This time, the three-time Olympic champion missed out on a medal by the closest of margins. She placed fourth, 5 centimeters too short to land on the podium. The world record holder will not retire just yet. She hopes for her last tournament to be the 2025 World Athletics Championship in Tokyo.
And now let's return to our main story. Now, in the biggest prisoner swap in post-Soviet history, Poland released a Russian-Spanish freelance journalist accused of spying for Russia. He was detained at the Ukrainian border and was freed during the swap. Meanwhile, Poland did not secure the release of Polish-Belarusian journalist Andrzej Poczobut or any Belarusian dissident. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski stressed that efforts to release other political prisoners, including Andrzej Poczobut, are taking place within a different procedure. Now, Sikorski also said that several of Poland's border crossings with Belarus will remain closed until Andrzej Poczobut is released from prison. Now, joining me to talk about the situation is Franek Wiaciorka, Senior Advisor to Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Good evening.
Now, before I ask you about your reaction when you realized that Andrzej Poczobut nor any other political prisoner from Belarus was not released, I would like for you and our viewers to hear a soundbite of Alena Masliukova, Viasana Human Rights Center.
Total disappointment. I haven't been able to shake it off until just now, because a person lives in hope, and when it became known that an exchange was being prepared, of course we hoped very much that some of the Belarusian political prisoners would definitely be exchanged.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, I mentioned Andrzej Poczobut, but also we have Ales Bialiatski, and there are many, many more. Now, I would like to know your personal reaction to the situation.
Of course, we regret that no Belarusians included into this swap, because they are suffering a lot of pressure, they are being tortured, many held incommunicado, and of course they deserve to be released. We have right now 1,400 political prisoners, including mentioned Poczobut, Ales Bialiatski, Igor Losik, Maria Kolesnikova. Many of them are connected to different European countries, and of course it would be important to include them, to push Putin and Lukashenko to release Belarusian prisoners as well. But I also know that Minister Sikorski and other Polish officials, they are doing a lot to release Poczobut and others. They put a lot of efforts to release. So it's not the problem of Poland or the West, it's the problem of Lukashenko. He's keeping Poczobut and political prisoners as the only thing Lukashenko has left. He doesn't want to release them, he doesn't want to show the weakness, and he will be keeping them very, very firmly, and I don't know what could force him to release them. Perhaps we need more pressure and more sanctions.
Now, what do you think has to happen? What will it take for these prisoners, for these innocent, law-abiding citizens to be freed from Belarusian prisons?
I think before we had already situations when Lukashenko released political prisoners 15 years ago. It was when David Kramer from State Department came to Minsk, and he told Lukashenko, if you don't release political prisoners in 1 month, there will be huge sanctions on you. And it helped. Very quickly, in a few weeks, all main political prisoners got free. So I think we need such strong position if we want to deal with Lukashenko, if we want to make him step back and release innocent people. Right now, we only see the escalation of repressions. Every day, 12, 15 people are being detained. Not many people are released. Of course, some already served their terms, but they're in very poor physical and mental condition. And this terror we are passing through right now, it's unbearable. And we ask the world to pay attention to Belarus. It's very important. It's not only a political issue right now, it's also humanitarian catastrophe.
But do you believe that the world is paying enough attention to Belarus?
I think it could be done much more, of course. As we speak, Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya speaks with Minister Annalena Baerbock also about the same issue. We are in touch with American officials. We are thinking what else we can do. I think, that together with the Western partners, we will find the solution. Belarusian democratic forces must continue what we do, to mobilize people inside the country, to help repressed, but we cannot change the situation without the allies, without the support from the West. We need attention, we need assistance, but also we need sanctions, strong sanctions on Lukashenko's regime, because after the war has started, most of the sanctions were imposed for the complicity in the war, which is right. Lukashenko is the criminal. But almost the topic of political prisoners was almost forgotten.
Now, speaking of allies, Poland is, I think, one of the staunchest allies of the opposition, of the Belarusian oppositionists. Now, Radosław Sikorski, Polish foreign minister, said that the opening date for the border crossings depends on the length of Andrzej Poczobut's imprisonment. It takes two to tango. Now, currently, there are two open border crossings opened, one in Terespol and one in Kukuryki. How big of a hit is it for Lukashenko that the border crossings are closed?
Let's remember that through this border, the goods from Russia and from China goes to the EU and back from the EU to Russia. There are billions of dollars passing every single day. It's the very important source of money for both regimes, for Putin and Lukashenko. And if the borders will be closed for goods, it will hit a lot Moscow and Minsk. So I think this position of Minister Sikorski is very fair, it's smart, it's strong. It's very important to stick with this position, not to make concessions, but at the same time, not to close the borders for people, for ordinary Belarusians, because we are living like, in East Berlin. For us, that's the only connection with a free democratic world. And isolating the regime, we must not isolate the people, keep them connected to Europe.
Well, that is true, and the crossing in Terespol, I think, that's the one that is opened for just regular citizens. Now, do you think a chance of opening the rest of the border crossings may motivate Lukashenko to actually free Andrzej Poczobut or any other political prisoners?
I don't know, because I think we need psychiatrists to explain Lukashenko's behavior. It's very logical. He's very nervous. He's living in nightmares. He's afraid of people, of Belarus. After 2020, he lost legitimacy and he feels very fragile. So I don't really think what can motivate him and what is motivation behind all his actions he are doing right now. But I think this is additional point of pressure, which is very important not only for Lukashenko, but also for the people around him, and the border trade is important. Opening these border checkpoints is of course an important factor, but the trade of goods, this is something we must pay attention. If we stop, this transit of important, vital goods for Putin and Lukashenko, definitely Lukashenko will must step back. And I know that Polish president had a very important visit to Beijing, also speaking about this border. And we know that China also can put pressure on Lukashenko because it's interested to have this border open.
Now, to put it into perspective for our viewers from around the world, can you tell us in what conditions are the political prisoners kept in Belarus, and why are they imprisoned?
So most of the people are imprisoned since 2020 for participation in protests, for supporting Ukraine. Many people got arrested for speaking Belarusian language in Belarus. It's also the crime because you can speak only Russian officially. And many people are just randomly detained. It's like in Stalin times. The repressions are very arbitrary. They take people just because they want to see the fear in the population. People are held in solitary confinements, especially people like Andrzej Poczobut on the screen. Many of them don't have any communication with the outside world. Many of them don't have letters received. Many of them are not having any newspapers received. And this is the torture not only on prisoners themselves, but also on their relatives, their families. 10 people just disappeared 1 year ago, including the husband of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, and she doesn't know if he is alive. And this is the tactics, repressive tactics that Lukashenko uses, and he borrowed these tactics from Stalin times.
Now, many people from around the world sometimes ask, even me personally, why are the oppositionists still in Belarus? I mean, they could just leave the regime, leave the country, leave the family, and just have a normal life outside of it. So my question too is, what motivates these oppositionists to stay in the country and to fight for freedom?
Because it's our land, because it's our country. Many people don't want, to go to other countries and live there. Many actually, even if they are informed that KGB can come tomorrow, they decide to stay in the country because it's a principal thing. They were born there and they want to live there. and no Lukashenko, no repression stops them. But of course, many people are leaving the country massively, leaving Belarus, looking for a safe refuge. 500,000 of Belarusians, according to the United Nations, left Belarus since 2020.
Unfortunately, I think we have lost connection. Our guest was Franak Wiaciorka, Senior Advisor to Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya. Sir, thank you very much. And thank you for watching World News Tonight. Stay with us for more news and comments.